My name is Chase Morgan. If you walked into my store today, you'd probably peg me as someone who's always had it together. Polished shoes, silver watch too, calm to be new, money, too quiet to be desperate. You'd never guess I was once left like a paper receipt folded forgotten and tossed aside for something shinier. But here's the thing. Sometimes being discarded teaches you how to own the whole damn store. So trust me, you'll regret skipping this part. So before you sit back and listen, take a moment to like the video and subscribe to the channel, but only if you really like what I have to say here. Now get in the mood to listen to this story, because it might be the ultimate sweet revenge. She left me on a Tuesday. That's not a metaphor. I mean literally at 9:14 a.m. on a gray, unremarkable Tuesday. Elise walked out of our apartment with a rolling suitcase, a crossbody bag, and a look on her face, like she had just remembered an appointment she'd rather not explain. There was no dramatic fight, no screaming, no "I can't do this anymore" speech over dinner, just a handwritten note left on the kitchen counter between a half-empty mug and the sugar jar. "Chase, I love you, but I can't live like this. I need more." That last word. More. What a parasite of a word. It clings to everything it touches, and still manages to be vague enough that you can't stab it with anything sharp. What exactly did Elise want more of? Love, stability, protein powder, a house in the hills, fewer coupons in our mailbox. But I knew even before I finished reading the note. His name was Nathan Lowell. He was taller than me, louder than me, and wealthier than I could even pretend to be on my best day. A tech guy, the kind who called brunch a strategy meeting and used phrases like synergistic disruption without shame. We'd met once at a friend's engagement party. Elise introduced him as someone she used to know at Berkeley. The way she laughed at his jokes that night made something cold settle in my chest. Not jealousy, no, something worse. Foresight. Now, if you're thinking I stood there in my kitchen and crumbled like a soft cookie, you don't know me. What I felt wasn't grief, it was a rerouting of power. A slow, clean rewiring of whatever was left in my chest. Because this wasn't heartbreak. This was a beginning. That first night alone, I didn't cry. I didn't drink. I didn't even text her. I did something better. I went to the safe in my closet, the one behind the fake HVAC panel, and pulled out my ledger. Not a digital spreadsheet. A real leather-bound ledger, dark green with my initials pressed into the corner. You'd think a pawn shop owner in 2024 would keep everything online, but not me. Some moves are best recorded in ink, where no algorithm can tip you off. On the third page of that ledger, I wrote, "Objective. Reclaim what was taken. Target. Elise Carter. Method. Poetic justice. Maximum discretion. No mess. No begging. No violence. No closure talks. Just symmetry." It felt better than therapy. Cleaner than revenge. Because here's something I've learned from a decade of watching people pawn their regrets. The objects we give to others say more about us than we admit. And when we take them back, really take them back, we don't just reverse the story. We rewrite the ending. I kept up appearances at work. My pawn shop, Morgan Lux, isn't your typical grime-covered hole with rusty guitars and stolen blenders. It's appointment only, velvet chairs, soft jazz. Think Sotheby's if it had a petty little brother. I dealt in emotion more than value wedding rings from broken engagements, watches gifted by soon-to-be ex-fathers-in-law handbags that carried too many secrets. People came to me to forget. I made money helping them do just that. But now I had a personal stake, and the universe, messy as it is, didn't make me wait long for Act 2. 3 days after she left, Elise posted a photo. Her in a white silk dress, him in some overpriced tailored linen, and on her left hand, gleaming like it had been waiting for its close-up, was a ring. Emerald cut, halo of pavé diamonds, yellow gold, roughly 3 carats. I zoomed in, took a screenshot, sent it to a friend of mine in the Beverly Hills jeweler scene with no caption. 10 minutes later, he replied, "That's a Valmont custom, one of a kind. Perfect." You know what was funny? She didn't block me. Elise wasn't cruel. She was the kind of person who wanted to believe she left things kindly. The kind of person who'd say, "I hope we can still be friends," and mean it, right before uploading a picture with her new man to stories. I watched every single one, not because I missed her. I needed to understand the performance. See, love and wealth have something in common. They're both illusions when posted too often. And the more Elise tried to convince the world that she had moved up, the more obvious it became to me she hadn't moved on. She was just trying to win. And I wasn't going to let her. Not in the way she thought. Not with anger, but with silence, precision, and eventually, a very expensive ring that would find its way back to my hands, one quiet move at a time. The first time I saw Nathan Lowell in person after the breakup, I was standing behind the counter at Morgan Lux polishing a 1972 Rolex Submariner that had once belonged to a senator who drank too much scotch and trusted the wrong mistress. And there he was, Nathan, on the screen of Elise's Instagram story, of course, not in my store. I saw it during my lunch break while eating a turkey wrap I didn't even want. It popped up between a fitness model's protein ad and some barbershop tutorial I didn't remember following. There was Nathan sitting poolside in what looked like Ibiza shirtless smug and holding the dog Elise and I adopted together. I nearly choked on spinach. The post had some predictable caption, "Brunch with my two love Sundays. My dog, Baxter." The same golden retriever I raised from a clumsy little furball that used to pee on the corner of my couch and chew through my suede shoes. Elise had taken him with her. I'd told her she could at the time I was trying to be noble, mature, evolved. God, what a joke. Now there he was in Nathan's lap tongue, out tail wagging, probably thinking this was all some extended sleepover. But I wasn't angry. Not yet. I was studying. That's something Elise never understood about me. I don't yell. I don't break things. When something doesn't go my way, I do what I've always done. I pay attention. Nathan Lowell was by most accounts a golden boy. He co-founded some productivity app that raised $38 million in Series B funding and promptly became a SaaS darling overnight. He was the type of guy who wore smartwatches with woven bands and called every woman he met legendary. I knew his kind. Too much confidence, too little self-awareness, and just enough money to get dangerous. But here's what I also knew. People like Nathan were always just a few strategic cracks away from falling apart. Because when everything came too easily, they never learned how to patch anything back together. And me, I was nothing if not good with broken things. Over the next few weeks, I kept tabs on them the same way I do with high-value assets that might hit the market. I watched every tagged photo, every story, every humble brag about their new chapter. They went to Napa. They took a helicopter ride over the coast. They dined at a Michelin-starred pop-up in an alley that served oysters on slabs of salt rock. And then right on cue came the announcement. It wasn't even subtle. A close-up of Elise's hand resting gently on Nathan's chest, that same smug smile on both their faces. The caption was 4 words. He asked. I said yes. And beneath that, a wall of hashtags so performative they should have come with a spotlight. Blessed, yes, forever my foreverman Ringgoals. I don't know why it stung. I didn't want her back. But seeing her so quickly replaced like I was some starter boyfriend, she grew out of triggered something ancient in me. Not longing, not jealousy, just resolve. Because I wasn't just watching a love story. I was watching a transaction. That ring was a flag, a message, a monument to her upgrade. And something about the way Elise showed it off, as if it validated her, as if it erased everything that came before, made me realize exactly what I needed to do. I wasn't going to humiliate her. I was going to rewrite her narrative, one diamond at a time. I've always been fascinated by rings, not for their sparkle, but for their symbolism. You don't just wear one. You declare something when you put it on. Ownership, devotion, value, loss. I've seen men pawn engagement rings that still had warmth from a broken proposal, and I've seen women sell wedding bands like they were finally peeling off a curse. So I studied hers, Elise's, every detail. It was a rectangular emerald-cut clean lines, elegant, not flashy. A halo of small pavé diamonds surrounded it, and the band was a custom curvature in brushed yellow gold. It was tasteful. It was intentional. And it had to be traceable. I pulled some favors. Called a jeweler I'd once helped out of a messy customs issue. Sent him the photo. Gave him a 48-hour window. The call came on a Friday evening while I was polishing a Tiffany brooch from 1934. "Yeah, I've seen that piece before," my guy said. "It's a Valmont signature. Only 5 made last year. The one in your pic. Custom order. Beverly Hills Boutique. Private client." I smiled. "Can you get me the specs?" He laughed. "You want to buy it?" "No," I said. "I want to know what it'll cost me to get it back when he loses it." That weekend, I cleared my schedule. I didn't go out. I didn't answer texts. I sat in my apartment with a notebook plotting like I was preparing for a heist. Because in some ways I was not a loud one, a quiet one. This wasn't going to be some messy, toxic, angry ex-boyfriend spirals. I wasn't going to leak her photos or beg her to come back. I wasn't even going to make a scene. I was going to wait until the very thing that symbolized her new life came loose, slipped off, got sold, or traded, or misplaced. And then I'd be there to buy it. Not because I wanted her, but because some things belong in my hands, not as memories, but as trophies. Because Elise may have left me for a richer man. But when the lights dimmed and the buzz faded, I'd be the one with the last laugh. The thing about planning revenge, not the angry scream into a pillow kind, but the patient spine-chilling sort, is that it doesn't feel like revenge. It feels like preparation, like checking your coat before a blizzard, or lacing up your boots before a war you already know how to win. That's where I was when the engagement post went viral. Not just among her circle. Elise had always been the kind of person whose friendships were more curated than organic. She knew influencers had the perfectly undone hair-posted wellness reels at golden hour. So when she posted that ring, the likes came faster than the algorithm could breathe. 92,000 likes in 18 hours. Over 4,000 comments. "Stunning! You deserve this." "Power couple." And my personal favorite, "Upgrade of the century." I screenshotted it. Not out of pettiness. I just like keeping receipts. Let me tell you something I've learned. Dealing with luxury regret for over a decade. Nothing gets offloaded faster than a high-profile item tied to a failing relationship. Not even Ferraris. Not handbags. Not art. But rings. Rings are different. They carry intention. They're meant to last. Which means when they don't, when things go sour, those rings become radioactive. Nobody wants to keep the reminder, especially not the person who thought they won. So I watched, waited. Not out of obsession, out of experience. I knew that ring would come back to me somehow. And then the real question hit me. How could I speed that up? I couldn't just wait for their relationship to unravel on its own timeline. No, that's inefficient. If I wanted the ring, I had to make the ring move. And to do that, I needed information. It started with the ring maker. I set up an appointment under a fake name, Brandon Fields, an aspiring hedge fund manager with a guilty conscience and a fiancé who deserved better. You wouldn't believe how easy it is to impersonate a man trying to spend too much on an apology. The Valmont boutique was nestled between 2 overpriced galleries in Beverly Hills, complete with marble floors and complimentary champagne. The receptionist wore gloves just to hand me a brochure. "Mr. Fields," she chirped. "Mr. Valmont will see you now." Victor Valmont, designer jeweler ego wrapped in a pinstripe suit. He welcomed me like I was a minor royal. I showed him a screenshot of Elise's hand and said, "I want one just like this." He squinted. "That's one of ours. Custom commission, yellow gold, emerald center, 2, 7 carats. Halo setting with FVS1 pave stones." That was Nathan Lowell's order, wasn't it? Bullseye! I leaned back and smiled. How long did it take to make? 7 weeks. Source the stone from a conflict-free vendor in Tel Aviv. Not a replica piece. No two are alike. And, hypothetically, I asked if that ring were to come back onto the market, how would someone get it? He gave me a look. "Are you planning to break off your engagement?" I smiled. "No, but sometimes love gets complicated." From that single meeting, I learned everything I needed to know. The ring was worth just under $160,000. It had a micro-etched ID code under the center stone. It was registered in Nathan Lowell's name, meaning, if he ever tried to liquidate it discreetly or use it as collateral, it would hit a network of private brokers I already knew. That's when my plan really started. Because here's the funny part about people like Nathan: their wealth is often far more fragile than it looks. Flashy startups burn cash faster than candles at a cult ritual. And based on a few very targeted whispers from my sources in venture capital, Nathan's company was, shall we say, over-leveraged, which meant sooner or later, that ring wouldn't just be a symbol. It would be an asset. I didn't need to destroy their relationship. I just had to create a little pressure. I reached out to a guy I hadn't spoken to in 4 years, Cole Rayner. Last time we talked, he was laundering jewelry through offshore holdings and trying to disappear after a bad insurance play in Dubai. Now he worked under a new name, brokering high-value assets for liquidity-strapped entrepreneurs. I told him I needed a favor. I want to create a market for a ring that hasn't hit the block yet. He laughed. You're insane. Probably, but when it shows up, and trust me, it will, I want to be the first phone call. He paused. Does the owner know it's going on sale? I smiled. Not yet. But he's the type who thinks he owns everything. Until he doesn't. A week later, Cole sent me a file. Nathan Lowell's debt profile. Not public, of course, but enough to get the picture. Bridge loans. Convertible notes. 2 personal guarantees he should never have signed. 1 angry investor threatening litigation. And 1 Miami condo mortgaged to the hilt. I didn't need to ruin his life. I just needed to tilt it. And I knew exactly where to apply pressure. Because every engagement has its weak spots. Sometimes it's trust, sometimes it's money, and sometimes it's both. At this point, you might be wondering if I felt bad, if there was any part of me that hesitated. Let me put it this way: there's a kind of silence that follows betrayal. Not grief, not rage, just clarity. You realize some people don't break your heart. They free you from the lie you were telling yourself. Elise wasn't stolen from me. She left because she thought she found something better. And now I was going to show her what better really looked like. Some people wait for karma. I don't. Karma is too slow, too poetic, too soft. What I trust is cause and effect delivered with a velvet glove and surgical timing. You don't sit around praying your ex's life collapses. You find the cracks and you lean. And in Nathan Lowell's case, there were plenty of cracks. While Elise flaunted their engagement ring on social media and tagged luxury brunches like unpaid brand deals, I was making phone calls. Quiet ones. The kind where no one says names, but everyone understands exactly what's being arranged. See, I'd spent the last 10 years cultivating something Nathan didn't have. Not just money, but favor. Relationships that lived in the shadowy corners of high society, places money couldn't quite reach. Divorce attorneys who knew how to float assets. Private security firms who lost things. And more relevantly, boutique brokers who specialized in the discreet movement of regret. I called in 2. One worked on luxury liquidation. The other, repossessions with polish. I need to create a debt squeeze, I said plainly. On who? Doesn't matter, I replied. He just needs to feel like he's running out of air slowly. The magic trick wasn't about bankrupting Nathan. No. That would have been crass, loud, and obvious. And Elise would have defended him. I didn't want to destroy him. I wanted him to look unreliable. It started small. One of his companies, a software arm offering personal optimization solutions, was backed by a few East Coast investors. I fed those investors a rumor that Nathan was trying to flip equity without board approval. Technically false, but believable enough to spark panic. Within 72 hours, 2 of them started requesting financial reviews. Then came the car. Nathan owned a McLaren. I knew because he posted a reel revving it in the driveway of their rented Hollywood Hills house. I also knew he bought it under a shell company that was tied to his startup, not his personal credit. So I called a contact who worked in asset tracking. You want it repoed? He asked. No, I said. I want it scared. The car disappeared for one night. Just one. Parked on a different street. No damage. No theft, just gone long enough for Nathan to file a police report and panic scramble through every legal document he'd ever signed. By the time it returned in perfect condition with a vague apology note from a towing error, Nathan was 2 days into what looked like a breakdown. And Elise. She'd gone silent on Instagram. But none of that compared to the ring. I knew it would happen eventually, but even I was surprised at how fast the pressure worked. A week later, Cole texted me, "Your friend's in trouble. The ring's up." Just like that. Apparently, Nathan had quietly put it down as collateral for a private cash loan. Nothing illegal, nothing even uncommon. But telling, the moment the loan defaulted, and it did, the ring became broker property. And as fate would have it, that broker was one of mine. I played it cool. Didn't buy it the first day. Waited. Let it sit in the velvet tray of my world under soft lights behind a fingerprint-proof case as a message to no one and everyone. A week later, I wired the money. A clean deal. Market price. No, I got it for 41 cents on the dollar. Because even love, no matter how expensive, depreciates. The day it arrived, I took my time opening the box. The same black velvet she'd shown off on social media. The same ring. Same cut. Same gold. But now, mine. And here's the part I didn't expect. Holding it didn't make me angry. It didn't even make me smug. It just made me certain. I wasn't chasing revenge anymore. I was curating history. One object at a time. I placed it in the most prominent case in the shop. No label, no price. Just a tiny placard that read, "Not everything valuable is for sale." I didn't post. I didn't gloat. I just waited, because I knew Elise would find out. And when she did, the ring that once symbolized her future would be staring back at her from behind glass, cold, elegant, and absolutely untouchable. You can always tell when someone realizes they've made a mistake. Not because they apologize. No, people like Elise don't do apologies. They do pauses, tiny glitching moments where their world doesn't compute, a sudden hesitation in their voice, an unliked post they'd normally engage with, a delayed response to something they'd never ignore. It was a Thursday when it happened. I was standing in my shop glass polished jazz, humming the scent of bergamot candles lacing the air, when a woman walked in wearing oversized sunglasses and a wool trench, despite the 72-degree heat. Elise. She didn't look at me. Not right away. She pretended to admire a diamond tennis bracelet on the side shelf, ran her fingers across a row of gold bands with the delicacy of someone performing grief. Then her eyes landed on it. The ring. Her ring. And I saw it. That moment. That twitch behind her lip, her throat stiffening ever so slightly. Like she'd swallowed a name. She looked at the placard. "Not everything valuable is for sale." And then she looked at me. "Chase," she said, finally removing her glasses. "This place looks different." I smiled. "Things evolve. You changed the layout. You changed the dog." Her eyes narrowed. "That's not fair." I tilted my head. Neither was leaving without a conversation. She flinched. There it was. Not guilt. Just discomfort. The kind that bubbles when someone realizes their actions no longer have purchase over you. "I wasn't sure if I should come," she said, glancing again at the ring, but I needed to know if it was really the same one. I didn't answer. Just folded my arms. "Where did you get it?" she asked. "Oh, it found its way home," I said casually. Funny how that works. Elise stepped closer to the case, her voice barely above a whisper. "He told me it was lost. That someone stole it." I raised an eyebrow. Maybe someone did. Integrity, too. She looked at me. Then, not like an ex. Not like an old lover, but like someone trying to solve a riddle written in a language they once spoke fluently, but forgot in the arms of someone newer, shinier. "You're not going to give it back." I almost laughed. "Elise, do I look like the kind of man who regifts?" She lingered a few moments longer, circling the display like someone trying to make peace with a ghost. I said nothing. Sometimes silence is the sharpest instrument you can play. Before she left, she turned to me again. "He's not who I thought." I nodded slowly. "Neither were you." And with that, she walked out. No slam of the door. No backward glance. Just the sound of her heels clicking against the marble floor, soft, sharp, and smaller than I remembered. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't punch the air or light a cigar. I just walked to the display case and looked at the ring again. I imagined Nathan pacing his condo trying to explain a loan gone wrong. Elise staring at her hand like it betrayed her. And me, I didn't have to explain anything, because I never made promises I couldn't keep. They wanted fast money, fast love, fast proof. I gave them permanence. That night, I poured myself a glass of bourbon and sat on my balcony overlooking the city. The lights blinked like tiny confessions, and I let them talk while I stayed quiet. The ring was safe. The score was settled. And Elise, she was learning the same lesson Nathan would eventually understand. You don't get to discard someone just because you think you've traded up. Sometimes what you left behind buys back what you thought you'd won. There's something incredibly satisfying about watching someone else wear the mask they once made you wear. Nathan Lowell, for all his bravado, didn't crumble instantly. No, he tried to hold it together. Like any ego-driven man, he couldn't accept the idea that someone might be quietly outmaneuvering him. But you can only hold up a collapsing ceiling for so long, especially when you don't realize the walls are already hollowed out. I knew the next crack would come not through Elise, but through him. See, Elise was emotional. Nathan was strategic. If you wanted to break their engagement, you didn't hit her heart. You hit his wallet. And that's exactly what I'd been doing. So it didn't surprise me when 2 weeks after our little reunion in the shop, I got an email. Anonymous, of course. Subject line: interested in reacquiring an item from your collection. Attached was a low-res screenshot of the ring. My ring. Her ring. The message was simple. A client of ours is hoping to repurchase this item at a premium. Double what you paid. Name your terms. I laughed out loud. Not because it was funny, but because it was predictable. That wasn't just a business inquiry. That was desperation. The sender didn't sign their name, but I traced the IP. A ghost address bounced through multiple servers, but eventually it pointed to a legal firm I recognized, one Nathan had used to structure his holdings. I didn't respond. Not immediately. That would have been far too generous. Instead, I waited 24 hours. Then I sent back a single sentence. This piece is part of a private collection and is not for resale. No price. No room for negotiation. Just a closed door with no peephole. I pictured the moment Nathan opened the reply, the way his jaw probably tensed, the way Elise might have stood nearby asking, "Did he say yes?" while he stared blankly at the screen, realizing just how far this had slipped out of his control. And that's when things really began to unravel. Elise, to her credit, didn't post for 3 full weeks after that. A digital silence that screamed louder than any breakup announcement. The next time she appeared online, her profile photo had changed from a couple's selfie to just her. Her bio no longer read fiancé, but simply, "That's Gen Z for something died, but I'm pretending it's personal growth." As for Nathan, his company missed its funding target. The App Store pulled his latest product for compliance violations. A quiet, expensive lawsuit was filed under seal. I didn't even need to help that part along. He did the damage himself. But the best part, the ring sat untouched, still gleaming in my shop's front case. About a week later, something strange happened. A young woman came into the store. Late 20s, sharp blazer, too nervous for a usual client. She hovered near the ring case, clutching a leather portfolio. "Can I help you?" I asked. She looked up like a child caught stealing. "I'm here on behalf of someone." I already knew who. She opened her folder and placed it on the counter. Inside was an offer letter. Formal. Lawyer approved. Signature space left blank. This time, the bid wasn't just double what I paid. It was 5 times the price. Enough to renovate the entire store, expand, open another location. And yet, I closed the folder without reading the rest. "You can tell your client I said that this ring was never for sale. It was always for return." She blinked. "Return." I leaned closer. Some things don't go back to where they came from. They go to where they were always meant to be. She stood in silence, unsure what to do next. "Would you like a receipt for your wasted trip?" I offered, half smiling. She left without another word. That night, I moved the ring. Not far. Just from the front display to the private vault room behind my office. Not because I was worried, but because its purpose had been fulfilled. It was no longer a trophy. It was a relic. A reminder of how power isn't always about wealth or flash or fame. Sometimes it's about control. Quiet, steady control. Over your space, your emotions, your future. Elise had tried to trade up. Nathan had tried to outbuy me. But in the end, they both learned the same thing. You don't get to measure worth with a price tag. And when you play games with people who understand value, you'd better not bluff. Not online. Not in my shop. The kind of encounter life throws at you to test if you've really moved on, or if you're just good at pretending. It happened at a cafe in Silver Lake. The kind with reclaimed wood, overpriced lattes, and enough exposed brick to make it Instagram-worthy. I was waiting for a friend, a silent partner from San Diego who wanted to invest in a second location for Morgan Lux, when I saw Elise walk in alone. She hadn't noticed me yet. She looked different. Same hair, same posture, but something about the way she held herself felt unsettled, like someone trying to hold on to grace with fingers made of paper. She stood in line quietly, phone in one hand, thumb hovering over the screen, but not tapping anything, not smiling, not posting. Not the Elise I remembered. And definitely not the Elise who once flaunted a ring like it was proof of evolution. I didn't plan on saying anything. I had nothing to prove. But the universe had a cruel sense of humor. She turned. Our eyes met. It was fast, just a flicker, and I saw it. Recognition followed by hesitation, like her brain needed to buffer the idea of me sitting there casually sipping espresso in a charcoal button-down, legs crossed, unbothered. She looked away, then looked back, then took a breath and walked over. Chase, she said, her voice cautious but not cold. Elise. We nodded at each other like two diplomats at a ceasefire. She glanced at the seat across from me. You meeting someone? I motioned to the extra cappuccino across the table. Not for a while. You? She shook her head. Just needed to get out of the house. House. Not our house. Not his house. Just house. Interesting. She sat down. I didn't offer. She didn't ask. It just happened like muscle memory from a life that no longer fit either of us. How have you been? She asked, eyes scanning me like a TSA agent. I smiled. Collecting. Collecting what? Moments. Mistakes. Rings. The corner of her mouth twitched. She wasn't sure if it was a joke. That made it better. You look good, she said, trying to fill the silence. I nodded. I feel permanent. That confused her. She sipped her drink, probably something with oat milk and a 3-syllable name. Her hands weren't wearing anything. No ring. Not online. No signs of a forever that ever existed. After a few beats, she said it. I saw it. I raised an eyebrow. What's that? The ring. In your shop. I didn't tell him. I just saw it. And I knew. I leaned forward. Knew what? She blinked. That it was over. That he lost it. And the moment I saw it again where it shouldn't be, I realized something. What's that? She hesitated, eyes flicking down to the table fingers tracing the ceramic rim of her cup. I left someone who built things for someone who bought them. That almost got to me. Almost. But I remembered the mornings she'd rush to like his posts before brushing her teeth. The way she'd check his calendar to coordinate our weekends. The way I became a placeholder while she previewed someone else's life. So I kept my tone calm. Detached. I wasn't angry. I was resolved. You didn't just leave me, Elise. You traded stability for spectacle. You thought I was a story you'd already read. She bit her lip. And the ring? I continued. That wasn't a mistake. That was a headline. You just didn't expect it to be archived so soon. We sat there for another minute. No accusations. No pleas. Just two people sitting in the same moment with wildly different versions of how they got there. She stood up. I hope you're happy, she said. I am, I replied. Mostly because I'm not performing happiness for strangers. She paused, then reached into her bag and pulled out a tiny envelope. I wrote you something, she said. After I left, I never sent it. She placed it on the table, then walked out. No hug, no closure. Just the jingle of the cafe door and the trace scent of her perfume lingering behind. I didn't open the envelope. Not then. Not later. I kept it sealed, stored it in the same drawer as expired keys, broken watch links, and other symbols of things I've outgrown. Because some things don't deserve to be read. They deserve to be remembered unopened. A deal with the devil's broker doesn't look like a Hollywood thriller. There are no cigars, no underground poker dens, no men in trench coats speaking Russian. It looks like a coffee shop in Westwood. A guy in Allbirds and a Patagonia vest. A silver laptop. an unmarked folder, and a single sentence that changes the game. I have something that might interest you. Cole Rayner hadn't aged much, maybe a little thinner. Same shark eyes, same lazy smirk. He ordered a peppermint tea like he wasn't a man who once laundered Burmese rubies through a Miami shell company. Nice to see you in daylight, I said. He chuckled. I clean up well? You're the one swimming in sentiment these days. He tapped the folder. Inside was a printout transaction logs chain of custody asset tags. The ring. My ring. Elise's monument to elevation. Now just another item in a descending portfolio. She didn't know, Cole said, watching me read. Wasn't her name on the loan? Nathan defaulted. Hard. Spooked an investor who came asking questions. Suddenly half his personal assets were exposed. And this. I held up the file. This is officially brokered? He nodded. Held by a mid-tier recovery firm with no loyalty. You could grab it for pennies. I smiled. I intend to. We walked through the logistics like we were splitting a dinner bill. Cole would handle the paperwork. I'd wire the funds. He'd create a dummy buyer persona to shield my identity, just in case Nathan ever went looking for retribution. Any particular name you want on the file? He asked. I thought about it, then smiled. Put it under Elijah Ward. That's the name she gave our dog when we first adopted him, before she changed it to something trendier. Cole snorted. That's cold. It's efficient. He closed the laptop, sealing the deal. That's it then, he said. Once it clears, it's yours. No fingerprints. No flags. I extended my hand. Pleasure doing business with the devil's broker. I walked out of that cafe into the blinding California sun feeling lighter than I had in months. Because this wasn't just about buying a ring. It was about reversing the narrative. I wasn't the man who got left behind. I wasn't the sad ex watching from a distance. I was the architect, the author, and the best part? No one saw it coming. 2 days later, the ring arrived. Same black velvet box, same certificate, still pristine. I could have stored it away, locked it up like a dragon hoarding gold. Instead, I displayed it. Right in the front case of Morgan Lux, bathed in warm light encased in crystal. No price tag. Just the words. Not everything valuable is for sale. Some clients paused to look. Others didn't notice. But she would. She always liked to watch. A few weeks after that, I heard Nathan had reached out to a third-party appraiser. He wanted to verify the location of a missing engagement ring. The appraiser contacted Cole. Cole referred him to me under my alias, of course. The request was brief. A buyback? Full price. Clean exchange. No questions asked. I declined. Then I raised the theoretical price tenfold and said it was already under consideration by a collector with significant personal interest. The ring didn't just represent their failure. It became proof of my precision. A reminder that you can't fast forward through character development by throwing money at love. You can't measure loyalty in carats. And you sure as hell can't pawn off your mistakes without someone eventually buying them back on their terms. Back at the shop, I watched a young couple browse engagement rings one afternoon. They paused at mine. The woman's eyes widened. This one's beautiful, she said. Her boyfriend checked the label. Why isn't there a price? I stepped out from behind the counter. That one's not for sale, I said with a smile. It's part of the museum section. He chuckled. Your museum's got a dark sense of humor. I winked. That's where the best stories come from. You ever watch someone try to pretend like they're still winning? It's like watching a magician fumble their sleight of hand, except they keep smiling, convinced the audience didn't notice the card drop. That's what it was like watching Elise's life after the ring went missing. She didn't crash and burn people like her don't. They glide downward slowly with curated dignity and an abundance of passive voice. Her posts changed first. No more couple photos. No more tags with Nathan. The brunches turned into solo self-care days, her smile just a little too wide, her captions a little too motivational. Sometimes endings are just new beginnings in disguise. Healing isn't linear, but it's empowering. Classic spiritual smokescreen for my plans fell apart, and I need strangers to think I'm growing. But the real giveaway, the ring was gone from every photo. She didn't delete the old posts, she just stopped referring to them. As if erasing the caption somehow erased the history. Meanwhile, Nathan was imploding. a little at a time, like a high rise on delay. His startup missed its next funding round. Then came a quiet PR leak, an anonymous source citing financial mismanagement and inflated valuations. I didn't write the leak, but let's just say I helped it land in the right inbox. The press didn't tear him apart, but they chipped at the armor. Just enough. That's all I needed. The moment everything tipped, though, was far less dramatic than you'd think. It wasn't a scandal. It wasn't even public. It was a dinner. One of those high society events where everyone wears linen and pretends networking is a personality. A business associate of mine was being honored. I showed up with a date, one of those plus ones who knows how to look stunning and stay silent when the room gets shallow. And across the room, Elise and Nathan, like a ghost story that didn't know it had already ended. She froze when she saw me. He didn't recognize me at first, but the moment he did, his jaw locked, and I saw it. The twitch of a man cornered by a memory he didn't know could still hurt him. I kept my distance at first. Let the night breathe. Let him wonder if I'd approach. Let her try to act unbothered. And then, just as dessert was being served, I walked past their table. She looked up. He stiffened. I didn't stop, but I did adjust my cufflink just enough for the chain around my neck to slip out beneath my collar. And hanging from it, the ring. No label, no box. Just there, gleaming. A quiet reminder that some ghosts don't haunt, they collect. I didn't look back. I didn't have to. Later that night, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. A single message. Was that really necessary? No name. But I knew. I stared at the screen for a full minute, then replied, "Not necessary. Just satisfying." Blocked the number. Tossed the phone on the table, and poured myself a glass of rye. You know what's better than revenge? Being the lesson, not the villain. Not the hero. The chapter someone else has to reread every time they wonder why their new story doesn't feel right. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't sad. I wasn't even smug. I was done, which ironically made me more powerful than either of them ever imagined. Because when you stop needing closure, you start writing the ending. They'll never escape. You know the beautiful thing about silence? It makes people fill in the blanks with their worst fears. And that's exactly what started happening after that dinner. I didn't post about it. Didn't message Elise. Didn't take a victory lap. I just went on living, which to someone like Nathan or Elise was unbearable. Because when you hurt someone and they disappear, it's a relief. But when they don't disappear, when they flourish quietly, that's psychological warfare. I could tell it was working. Not because anyone said anything, but because of what stopped happening. Nathan, who once posted 6 motivational quotes a week, suddenly went dark. Elise, who had a brand deal with some overpriced skincare line, was quietly dropped. Mutual friends I hadn't spoken to in months began reaching out, subtle things like, "Hey, just checking in. You look like you're doing great." Translation: "We saw you win and want a piece of that calm." But I didn't need validation. I had something better. Control. One afternoon, as I reviewed my store's inventory updates, my assistant buzzed in. "There's a man here to see you. Says it's personal." I sighed. "Name." She hesitated. Didn't give one. "But he looks expensive." I already knew. I told her to let him in. And moments later, Nathan Lowell stepped through the frosted glass door of my back office. Tailored blazer, messy on-purpose hair, eyes like someone trying very hard to look unchanged. We didn't shake hands. He didn't sit. I didn't offer. "Quite the setup you've got here," he said, glancing around. "Thanks," I replied, tapping a pen on my desk. "It's mine." The silence that followed was delicious. "I want the ring back," he said finally. "Too late," I said. "I'll pay more." I raised an eyebrow. "You already did." "Twice, actually. Once in gold, once in pride." He flinched, just slightly. "It was never supposed to end like this," he muttered. I leaned back. "That depends on whose ending you were writing." He sighed. "Look, I know I don't come out of this looking great, but Elise, she's not herself. She's different." Because for once, I said slowly, she didn't get to pick the narrative. He ran a hand through his hair. "I loved her." "I didn't say you didn't. But she made her choice," I cut in. "She chose the flash, the promise, the version of you that wasn't sustainable. I don't blame her. I just don't miss her." Nathan looked at the floor. So that's it. I stood, walked to a side cabinet, opened it, took out a black velvet box and laid it on the table between us. He stared. He didn't touch it. You wanted it back, I said. There it is. He reached. I placed a hand over the box. You can't buy it, I said. But you can look at what happens when people confuse symbols for love. He stepped back, didn't say another word, and walked out. I never saw him again. Didn't need to. He left with the image of that box burned into his memory, proof that his victory had always been rented, not earned. That's the thing about pretending to have everything. Eventually, someone comes along and shows you what everything really costs. There's a special kind of satisfaction in not needing to explain yourself. It's not loud. It's not viral. It doesn't come with applause. It just is. A quiet hum beneath your ribs. A feeling like gravity finally shifted in your favor. That's where I was the day the engagement officially unraveled. No announcement. No press. No teary video of Elise holding back emotion behind a ring light. Just a silent purge. Her Instagram bio changed again, this time to nothing but her first name. All traces of Nathan were gone. The ring posts, the couple photos, the forever captions, vanished like smoke in a breeze. A mutual friend confirmed it a few days later during a wine tasting event I only half cared about attending. Yeah, Elise and Nathan broke it off. Apparently it just fell apart. I nodded politely as if I hadn't already orchestrated the soft implosion from 5 moves behind the curtain. That's too bad, I said. Some things just aren't built to last. What no one knew, what Elise never knew, was that I sent her something shortly after Nathan visited my office. A plain white envelope, no return address, no note. Inside, a Polaroid. The ring sitting in my display case. Same angle she used to photograph it on his chest. No caption, just light, glass, and silence. I don't know what she felt when she opened it. I don't want to know. That's the beauty of subtle revenge. You never stay to watch the fire. You just walk away, knowing exactly how warm it'll get. A few weeks later, she came in again. This time she wasn't hiding behind sunglasses. No performance. No polished trench coat. Just Elise. Hair in a loose bun. No makeup. A canvas tote bag instead of designer leather. She stood in front of the display case for a long time. Didn't ask to see the ring. Didn't ask for me. Just stood there. And then quietly she left. No dramatics. No words. Just the soft jingle of the door as it shut behind her. I didn't follow. Didn't need to, because by then the ring had done its job. It didn't matter who she dated next. Didn't matter what startup Nathan tried to salvage. The story was already written. And I wasn't the tragedy. I was the footnote they both had to read twice. Back in my office, I looked at the ledger I kept locked in the drawer. Same one I used the day Elise left me. Flipped to the page. The entry still sat in perfect ink. Objective. Reclaim what was taken. Method. Poetic justice. Maximum discretion. Status. In progress. I picked up my pen. Crossed out the last line. Wrote. Status. Completed. Ring returned to rightful owner. Closure achieved. Then I closed the book. Locked the drawer. And walked out of the office into the cool, clean air of a Los Angeles evening, feeling, for the first time in a long time, done. I wore it to dinner. Not on my finger, that would have been too obvious. Too theatrical. No, I wore the ring on a thin black chain around my neck, tucked just beneath the collar of a dark navy shirt. Polished. Intentional. Casual enough to be dismissed. Symbolic enough to never go unnoticed by the right person. It was a charity dinner. One of those overproduced, under-sincere fundraisers in downtown LA where tech guys pretend to care about oceans and actresses try to look moved by tax deductions. I'd been invited by a gallery client. VIP table course menu and just enough attention to justify a pressed jacket. And as fate would have it, there she was again. Elise. Across the room. Same venue. Different context. She wasn't a +1 this time. She came solo. Hair down. Black dress. Not the sparkling kind she used to wear around Nathan. This one was matte. Clean. Almost somber. Like she was trying to signal something to herself. She saw me within seconds. Her eyes flicked to the chain at my neck. Didn't blink. Didn't flinch. Just held my gaze for a moment longer than politeness required. She approached during the second course. I was speaking with an investor from Seattle about vintage watch portfolios when I saw her heels pause at the edge of the table. "Excuse me," she said softly. I turned. "Chase," she added. "Can I steal you for a second?" The investor waved me off with a smile. "Looks like you've got history to handle." I stood and followed her toward the back balcony, empty, except for a waiter pretending not to eavesdrop. Elise leaned on the railing, eyes on the skyline. "You wore it." I said nothing. "On purpose?" she asked, still silent. She sighed, the kind of sigh people let out when they know the apology would sound fake, so they settle for an admission instead. "I didn't think it would matter to you anymore." "It doesn't," I replied, "in the way you think." She turned. "Then what is this? Why parade it around like a trophy?" "I'm not parading anything," I said. "I'm reminding myself." "Of what?" I met her eyes. "That I don't need to raise my voice to be heard." She looked like she wanted to argue, or cry, or scream, but she did none of that. Instead, she laughed. Not out of joy, more like resignation. "You know," she said, "I used to think you were boring." I smirked. "I know. That's why you left." I thought I needed drama, adventure. And I got it, she said. And I hated every second. We stood in silence. Just the hum of the city below us. The wind lifting the hem of her dress. The weight of everything unsaid sitting between us like a second guest. She looked down. "I don't want it back," she whispered. "The ring," she nodded. "It means something different now." "Good," I said, "because it was never about giving it back to you." Her eyebrows lifted. I tapped my chest where the chain disappeared beneath the fabric. "It's about keeping it away from people who misuse value." She smiled faintly. "Then I suppose it's exactly where it belongs." She stepped forward just close enough to smell the memory of the perfume she used to wear when she wanted something from me. But this time, she didn't ask for anything. She just looked me in the eyes and said, "Thank you." Then she walked back into the noise of the event. I stayed behind, letting the wind settle, letting her words echo, letting the quiet win. Because sometimes revenge doesn't look like rage or destruction or chaos. Sometimes it looks like a man on a balcony holding the proof of what he survived right beneath his shirt. I didn't expect him to show up again. But sure enough, 3 weeks later, Nathan Lowell walked through the doors of Morgan Lux like a man entering court. No entourage, no sunglasses, no smug confidence. Just a creased jacket, dark circles under his eyes, and a slight limp in his pride. I was behind the counter reviewing a new shipment of pocket watches. He waited until I looked up. "Chase," he said, voice low. "Can we talk?" I nodded once without standing. "You have about 2 minutes." He walked up to the glass. The ring was no longer in the front case, but he didn't look around. He knew where it was. I came to say I understand now. I raised an eyebrow. "Understand what?" "What you did. Why you did it." I didn't reply. He continued shifting his weight. At first I thought it was just pettiness. But now, I get it. You weren't trying to hurt me. You were trying to reclaim yourself. "That's generous," I said, flipping a velvet cloth over a Cartier timepiece, but not entirely accurate. He looked confused. "Then why?" I finally met his eyes. Calm, clear. "Because you thought money meant ownership," I said. "Because she thought trading up meant discarding history. Because you both assumed I'd stay quiet." He nodded slowly. "She's not doing great. You know, that's not my burden anymore." He swallowed hard. "Do you ever miss her?" I paused. Thought about that question. "No," I said. "But I remember her." "That's enough." He looked around the shop. At the precision, the polish, the care. "I used to think people like you were just placeholders," he said. "Safe bets until the real prize came along." I tilted my head. "And now I know. You were the prize." He reached into his pocket, pulled out a thin business card, placed it on the counter. "My new company. Not tech. Just real things. Honest work. I'm trying to build again." I stared at the card, but didn't touch it. He waited. "Do with it what you want," he said. I just wanted to say, "I'm sorry." And then he turned and left. I didn't pick up the card for 2 days. When I finally did, I tossed it into the drawer with Elise's unopened letter. Same fate, same weight, same truth. Not all things deserve a second read. That night, I poured a drink and walked through the store lights, dimmed everything still. I passed the vault room and opened it, not for business, but for ritual. The ring was still there, but this time I didn't pick it up. I just looked at it and smiled, because Nathan had come looking for forgiveness. But I already had peace. The kind you earn, the kind you own, the kind that can't be stolen, gifted, or sold. There's a moment when every story stops being about revenge and starts being about freedom. It doesn't come with fanfare, no dramatic music, no final confrontation in the rain. It just arrives, like breathing easier one morning and realizing you haven't thought about them in days. That moment came on a Sunday. Quiet, simple. I was reorganizing a few vintage cufflinks for a collector out of Portland when my assistant poked her head into my office. "There's someone at the front," she said. "Asked if you were in." I gave her the standard nod. "Didn't leave a name," she added, but she looked peaceful. I knew, and I didn't hesitate. I walked out and there she was. Elise. Not in designer heels, no curated trench coat, no dramatic jewelry. She wore jeans, a white shirt, hair pulled back, no makeup, not even earrings. Just herself. She stood in front of the display case, not the one with the ring. That one had been rotated out weeks ago. This time she was looking at an antique watch set. Something from 1949. Swiss. Quietly elegant. "You move the ring," she said without turning. I did. Why? Because I stopped needing it. She looked at me then, not with regret, not with apology, just understanding. "You were always better at holding things than I was," she said. "And you were better at letting go." We both smiled. It wasn't bitter. It wasn't sad. It was final. "I'm leaving the city," she said after a pause. "Where to?" "Don't know yet. Just somewhere new." I nodded. She reached into her bag and pulled out the white envelope. I thought she'd forgotten the one I sent with the Polaroid. "It helped," she said. "Seeing it, knowing you had it, that it didn't end up pawned or discarded." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. She placed the envelope on the counter, still unopened. "This belongs with you now," she said. And just like that, she turned and walked out of my life for the last time. I waited a full minute before I touched the envelope. Opened it slowly. Inside was a note. Handwritten. Just a few lines. "I loved you. I just didn't understand you. You deserved someone who saw the quiet things you protected. I hope you found someone who listens better than I did. Thank you for never becoming cruel. Elise." I read it once, then folded it. Placed it in the drawer with the card Nathan had left behind. Not out of sentiment, not out of closure, but because it felt right to keep the last page where it belonged with the rest of the story. That night I closed early, walked out into the cooling dusk. No ring, no weight. Just the steady hum of peace echoing in the spaces they used to occupy. Because I didn't just get the last word. I got my life back. And that in the end was worth more than anything they could ever offer. You might think the story ends with me falling in love again. Meeting someone new. Walking into the sunset with the ring finally off the chain and onto someone else's finger. It doesn't, because this story was never about replacing Elise. It was about replacing the version of myself I lost when I let someone else decide my worth. And now I wake up without checking who posted what. I run Morgan Lux the way I used to dream about, refined, respected, expanding. A second location opened in Seattle last month. The third is in progress. We no longer just move luxury. We curate legacy. And me. I'm no longer haunted. I'm calm. Still. Solid. Because here's the real truth. She left me for a richer man. So I bought the ring he gave her. But in doing so, I bought back far more than gold and diamonds. I bought back ownership of my own story. That ring. It's not on display anymore. It sits in a small locked box in the back of my private office. Not because I'm hiding it, but because its job is done. It served as the symbol, the weapon, the message, the closure. Now it's just another chapter, filed away. Like the letter, like the card, like the life I used to want. Do I still think about her? Sometimes, but not with pain. More like a name in an old yearbook. Someone who mattered once, but only long enough to teach you something crucial. That what leaves you isn't always a loss. Sometimes it's a return to yourself. And if you've listened this far, really listened, then maybe you felt something too. A memory, a hurt, a question still spinning in your chest. Let it spin, let it sting, and then let it make you sharper, quieter, stronger. Because in the end, revenge isn't about hurting them. It's about choosing not to let them define you. So before you go, take one deep breath. Look at what they took. Then go build something bigger, something they can never own, something you'll never have to pawn to prove you were worth it. Let me leave you with this. Sometimes the sharpest revenge is no longer needing it. The ring, the money, the power plays, those were just tools. What mattered most was what I learned. That reclamation doesn't require destruction. It requires clarity, discipline, stillness. I didn't ruin Elise. I didn't bankrupt Nathan. I didn't become the villain in their story. I simply rewrote mine. And the moment I stopped trying to get them to understand me, that's when I became free. If you're holding on to a betrayal right now, if someone left you underestimated, you traded you in for a glossier life, let me tell you this. You don't need their apology. You don't need their validation. You don't need to prove a damn thing to people who already made the mistake of walking away. All you need is your own silence sharpened into a life so solid, so full, so undeniably yours that one day they walk into a room and know they lost something they'll never get back. So, lock the drawer, turn the lights out, and sleep better than they ever will. Good night. End of script.